Hi, Kelsey Fry here for MUATV.com in our Spotlight on Success. We're here live in New York City with LDean from New York, the Brow Wow. I was reading about you and they had an article on the Brow Wow of New York. Is that true?
That is true, yes. Daily Candy picked that up and they wrote a great piece about me and it produced 600 plus new clients.
So 600 plus, that's a lot.
That's when I stopped counting, and that
Wow.
was 2 years ago. So yeah, it was amazing.
Now, Daily
Really great.
Candy, is that a rag mag from here in New York? Or what is the Daily
It's
Candy?
basically a daily email, and they do
Oh.
announcements like sample sales, brow people, makeup people, hair people, but it's sort of an underground knowledge. It's not something that you can go and have your publicist get you on. It really comes from real life experience. I happen to have a client that came in who was a writer. She loved what I do, so she presented the piece to them. They picked it up, and
So
a
you
week
can't
later,
really pay to kind of get in there.
No.
Somebody has to discover that you
It's-
have something special, and then they
Yes.
take it to Daily Candy, and then it appears, and then you
Yes.
become part of the underground write-up of Daily Candy. Interesting. I've never heard of Daily
yeah,
Candy.
which
so I'll
makes
have-
it very trusted. And when people see something on there, they know that it's a legitimate, old-fashioned piece of publicity. I found even 13 years ago, even though the full brow is huge the last few seasons, even then the biggest request was, I want them fuller, I want them fuller. And that was something with my vision of what the brow should be, sort of that classic brow. I was able to create something that wasn't there, or at least
the
wasn't
classic
there
brow.
as-
It's always known when we're studying makeup
Yeah.
to try to achieve a classic brow. And you know, having had 20 years teaching experience, I mean, we do try to teach anyone that's starting in makeup artistry that the brow also has some, corrective techniques. So I'm sure
Right.
that you include that if you have specific clients, if they've got wide set eyes or closed set eyes. Do you kind of arrange the brow to complement, or help, improve that feature of closed set or wide set eyes? Do you work with that?
Yeah, I do actually. It's something that's not, it's sort of unconsciously now that I do it. I
Yeah.
just look and know what needs to be adjusted. But what always sparked my interest was these extremely detailed measurements that I did learn with Joe Blasco in my makeup training that went beyond this whole pencil thing that you see
Right, in the
repeated
books.
so often that there are so many variations that can just completely make
And
that.
one eye can be completely different than the
Yeah,
other. Yeah.
and so having those measurements and really studying that, I sort of was known even before I came to New York, just shooting with models back in Florida, as have them do your eyebrows, and a lot of it came from the aesthetic of that classic eyebrow, and it was full and it was blocked off, and just the placement of the peak and all of these things just always resonated with me. And so bringing that into an arena that was sort of saturated with a lot of more groomed, manicured, thinner brows, there was definitely a place for me. And the last few seasons, I think, have secured it in fashion just because that is back. It's more youthful, a fuller brow. It's less maintenance, and and even with men as well, I
was going to
can
ask you about the
recreate.
men.
Yes.
Do you have a lot of
I
male
do.
clientele to kind of help
I do.
balance that? And maybe, I mean, obviously it's not in a glamour capacity that you do men, but I imagine you're kind of cleaning up rough edges so that it actually kind of opens their eyes up probably
Yeah.
and gets rid of that unibrow that they've been making so much fun of over the last few years in
Absolutely.
films.
And especially with men, because what makes a beautiful, if you ever see a natural brow in a guy that's never been touched and it's an amazing shape, what makes it amazing is that it has that strong peak to it, but it fades out. It's not just
Right, it has
sort
that
of painted
center,
on.
that center where the hair is full and then it kind
Yes.
of sparses out, like a kind of a mountain range to
Yes.
Yeah.
And I can recreate that with my technique because I can sort of shift it and take some years off the face, open up the eye, separate them, and still leave a natural line to where they don't walk into the gym the next day and get
They get
snickers.
laughed at,
Right.
or like it becomes some effeminate kind
Yeah.
of technique that they don't want to have. You want them to still have the manly man
Right.
look, and but be a little groomed, kind of silently groomed, so to
Right.
speak. Now, do you do also tinting of the eyebrows? Do you utilize any tinting when you're working in the?
I do sometimes. Typically, I'll leave that up to the colorist because I feel
Okay.
like if there's tinting going on with the brow, typically it's to sort of match what's
Going
been
on with the
changed with the
hair.
hair. I will do it sometimes, but by choice. I don't really pursue it and get into it because I love what I do so much, and I like to stick to what I know.
Right. So
I
you
like
create
the
beautiful
niche.
shape and let
Yes.
the colorist, add
Yeah.
whatever they want in regards to the hair color.
Right.
All right, so the secret question. What's your favorite tweezer? Obviously, if you're the tweezer, is it Tweezer Man?
No, it's Rubus by Mijas.
Rubus by
Yes.
Mijas. Now, where is that available?
They're at Ricky's now,
Mm-hmm.
and some smaller sort of boutique type drugstores.
Now, what do you like about them? I mean, because I have tools of the trade, and I do know that there are good tweezers and bad, and it's all about the point. It's all about
Yes.
the two ends meeting perfectly and not being like this, where you get tweezers where they're honed and then you have this open. So I'm appreciative of a good tweezer, which is why
Yeah.
I'm kind of asking for myself, actually.
Absolutely.
And for the MUA TV audience. But
I had a client, Laura, years ago. She brought them in, and she liked them so much that she wanted me to use them, and so I tried them, and I liked them, and I felt like it just felt immediately like a surgical instrument in a very good way. It felt very lightweight. It happened to be the slanted point. Because of the angle that I work at, that just works best for me.
right, so because your arm and your hand are working in a certain
Yeah,
position.
and I have a point, and I also have the flat edge that I can come underneath the hair and do
Right.
that. And so that has always stuck with me. I probably own about 12 pairs, and I send them off in, trios to be sharpened and
So you
aligned.
just resharpen them, right?
They do it. Mijas is great. They do it. It's out in Montana somewhere or something, and they align them and resharpen them, and they come back and they're like new.
That's
And
nice.
they run about $38, worth every penny.
A good tool's worth
Yeah.
every penny that you spend on. I mean, I understand when you say surgical tools because I actually recently, for my men's grooming kit, because get a lot of fine tuning of the mustache or sideburns that I actually purchased. I'll give you a tip back. It may not be a tip for you, but a tip back is I actually purchased ophthalmology scissors, which are for eye surgery.
Interesting.
And they are a really fine tip point that are like scalpel sharp, and they have a buoyant handle so that you're real easy. And you can actually go in, and for certain men that grooming, they like to just get one or two hairs.
Right.
And they'll clip really fast and quick without grabbing a couple of other hairs. So I keep these in my special surgical tool
Right.
box. So I really understand when it's good to have a good tool like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's fantastic. So, let's get on to, first of all, we know each other.
We do.
We've worked together in the capacity of traveling on Joe Blasco Roadshow.
Yes.
To launch the Joe Blasco Cosmetics back a few years ago. We met at the Nordstrom's launch in Chicago.
Yes.
And we had a good time there working
did.
with Mr. Blasco.
Absolutely.
And I know that you've also had a relationship with Mr. Blasco way before that. You said you started in Florida.
Yes.
And you started, why don't you tell me a little bit about that story, how you met Mr. Blasco, how you got
Okay.
connected with him. I think it was with the Glamour Shots.
Yes, I started working at Glamour Shots.
We all have. I want you to know when
Yeah.
you said Glamour Shots, I felt like, somebody of my own period,
It
because
was amazing training for
I'm
me.
going to say it was amazing for me too, because it was fast, quick,
Yes.
beauty makeups now. And
Yes.
the turnover was so great.
30
that
minutes hair and makeup.
30 minutes hair and makeup that you could actually do like 60 people, in
Yeah.
a day, and it really honed your speed.
Yes.
I found it really honed my speed, and it was really great to do different types of consumers. I mean, because you were
Oh,
just
yeah.
getting any and all
A to
types of
Z,
people,
every
and you weren't
age,
getting
skin tone.
perfection or perfect models. You were actually working on the consumers. So all of a sudden, something would sit down, or someone would sit down, and you'd be like, okay, and you'd get right in there, and so all your corrective techniques would kind of come to the surface. So
Yeah.
I'm really familiar with the Glamour Shots.
It was a great thing. I mean, I was an art major. I studied commercial art in college. Had to learn how to cut hair, so I went to barber school, got my barber's license, and graduated simultaneously from both. Went right into a hair salon, worked for a little bit, and there was a girl I knew in the mall. I worked in the mall cutting hair, and she worked at this place called Glamour Shots. I think she worked at Estee Lauder at the time. And I had just started sort of doing some before and afters on Friends, because makeup always made more sense to me as the beauty and the art than the hair did, because hair to me was more like sculpting,
Right.
makeup is more like
Styling.
illustrating, which is what I did in college. And she said, yeah, we use this stuff by this guy Joe Blasco, and I don't know, I just remember the conversation with her. And so I moved that was in Tampa, and I moved to Orlando, got a job at Glamour Shots, and it was like the dream job, styling hair and doing makeup all day and just doing photo shoots. And we used Joe Blasco's product, and so...
Had the big tester units. Right.
Well,
Did
we
you
didn't have the
test-
space for that in the
Oh, you didn't
stores
have the
I was
tester
in,
units?
but
Yeah.
we sort of had it all in
Yeah,
all
in your
sorts
case
of
and stuff.
caboodles and all sorts of things from the early 90s.
And those were, I mean,
Great.
we were talking with other artists, in Los Angeles, and I think that when you speak with artists that have used the Joe Blasco product, and I'm not really using this as a promotion, but
Yeah.
just speaking artist to artist, is that if somebody really learns and knows how to use a Joe Blasco product, it's an essential tool, with the high pigment in it. And I think a lot of people that don't, they think it is not this great product because it's too heavy. And I
Right.
think that, and when we were working in those Glamour Shots situations, you couldn't do it without a product like Joe's that was developed with a high pigmentation. So,
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
it's-
I am a great appreciator, and not just because I'm helping with MUATV.com, but a real appreciative of the product, and still to this day use the product. I actually customize colors now, and Joe's very generous to have colors mixed up that kind of work in the medium of high def and with certain clientele I have, so I can, because a lot of colors like the old Ruddy colors are not really, still in the stores anymore. There's a limited
Right.
edition that's left out there, and some of the colors that I really liked from the
Are
80s I
gone.
still like to have. So I'm a big fan of including Joe Blasco in my array of
Yeah,
foundations.
absolutely. Well, I'd worked with it close to 10 years, and this little trip to Chicago, this wonderful makeup artist showed me how to use it with LDean, and it completely changed my view of it, and that was you.
That was
I'd
me.
never seen it done, and the texture that it created was something completely different than the result I'd ever had with it. I've always adapted things to work for me. I mean, I lived in Milan for a few years at the time when makeup was really undone, and they didn't like me to use brushes when I was sort of apprenticing and assisting
is
at the
that? I'm
shows.
just curious.
It was just, makeup became undone. It was just that whole, like, sort of smudgy, not technical.
With your fingers, yeah.
And it sort of loosened up because I was so, like, I mean, I was airbrushing with paintbrushes before the airbrush even came out, or at least it looked like that, just because I was always about blending, and
techniques.
makeup sort of stopped that. It was less technical and it was more messed up, and I still was able to take my traditional products and just tweak them and make them fit, because once you understand the ingredients and the chemistry of it and
Then
how
you-
it works,
then it opens up for you in
I
so
mean,
many different ways.
you
right.
could walk into any drugstore and get whatever look you want, and
Yeah.
so if anybody wants to challenge me to do that, I'm up for it.
I'm always up for the challenge too, because there's so many products out there, and sometimes
Yeah.
people say this is better, this is worse, and I think there's a place for everything
Yeah.
out there, but the truth is you only need a minimal of a certain few things to work
Right.
predominantly on the entire public. I mean, there's always nice to have some little accent products, but there's
Yeah.
just so many products to choose from. Sometimes it's very difficult. I'm asked all the time, which I'll ask you too. What products do you really like? And it's like, well, give me a situation. Is it acne? Is it ethnicity? Is it
Right.
There's a lot of things I take into my mind and I compute before I actually choose something that I want to use, that I know it's the environment, all types of things. So
Right.
so we worked at Nordstrom's. That was fun. We had
Yeah.
a good time working there.
Yeah, that was in, I think that was about 2000, and I first, when I went to Glamour Shots was 91, and when Joe Blasco opened his school in Orlando, I was in the first graduating class as
Now, how was your
a
experience
trainer.
at school in Orlando?
It was great. I mean, I was 20, 21, I don't know.
Yeah.
We could scratch that. No, but I mean, I was young and just coming from Florida. This Hollywood thing was all
I
new
guess
to
what I
me,
meant
and
was, what it was like to be now into like a school like curriculum, and
I couldn't
8 to 5,
get
8 to
enough of
5.
it. I could not get enough of
Do you remember your instructor?
educating myself. Tamara Reed.
Tamara Reed.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And Joe was involved himself a lot
Yeah.
because it was the first class,
Right.
and
It was just
sort
opening up.
Yeah, and he didn't have the center where he's at now. He
Mm-hmm.
had, it was in 2 different places, and it just was, even though I only went through the beauty part because that what pertained to my current
Mm-hmm.
job at Glamour Shots, it just was, just the technical and the precision and everything was just like,
Right.
it was just great to me. And so I took that back and applied it and started training at Glamour Shots and ended up with 8 stores in Florida that I sort of oversaw, and began traveling nationally.
Out of the actual day by day and kind of then oversaw the entire operations of Glamour Shots.
And I would hire makeup artists. You know, I would do the interviews and hire them, and I would do training and everything from, you know, technique to sanitation. And I would go from store to store every week and evaluate the appearance, and I would look at all the finished photographs and say, okay, you guys are doing this, you're doing that. And being a young artist myself, that was one of the best parts of my early education, is actually teaching. It's amazing how much you learn from spitting something out
over
50
and
times,
over
60
and over.
times, and so that was great. And then
I have to agree with that. You know, I mean, I've been teaching for over 20 years, you know, because of Joe, and having that ability to take from what I learned from him in my apprenticeship with him, and then turned it into teaching while being credible in my craft. And still love to do it. I still operate in teaching with the journeyman classes at the local 706. And I really have found that even when we were at the International Makeup Artist Trade Show, there was a gal there that had a booth, you know, and I came up and introduced that we were with MUATV.com. And she said, Miss Fry. And anybody that calls me Miss Fry is either somebody I've taught, because nobody calls me Miss Fry unless, well, there might be some secret dark places that people would call me Miss Fry, but only someone that I've actually had a student and instructor relationships. And I totally agree with you. When you are consistently going over and over and over again, you actually can really enlighten yourself about something else and then add that into the curriculum. So I find it really valuable, the opportunity to have opened up my teaching avenue as well. So I understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I miss it. I occasionally will do a seminar and some one-on-ones. I do a lot of makeup lessons at the salon with consumers, but it's a little different than teaching an artist, because it sort of hinges more on retail, and so things need to be sort of watered down to make it
easy,
doable for them.
Yeah, it
you know,
can't be
one
too
brush,
complicated,
3 colors, you know, and so, but it was great. I enjoyed it, and then eventually went back and went through the entire makeup program and learned effects, which was, I actually went back through the beauty again. I insisted, and Joe let me do it, and so that enforced it even more, because we all know how long and detailed all those videos are, and so to see them twice within a few years was, you know, really, and I still refer to my notes from school all the time.
Have you seen the book that he collaborated with?
Yeah, I do bicep curls with it.
It's true. Well, now there's 2 and 3, and you can put them on your thighs and do some leg lifts.
Like, I guess I'm not going to take this on the plane for reading material.
Oh my gosh, no, that's
over
like,
the weight limit.
That's like something you have at home on the wooden, you know, library pedestal that you open up. I mean,
it's a Bible.
It is a Bible. Yeah.
I still don't think I've seen every page, but.
But 2 and 3 are now coming out. So when they are launched, I think in this spring or summer, early summer, you'll have to take a look at those, because those are really nice. I've been, you know, anticipating their arrival, so I got to take a look at the prototypes that were at the trade show, and I'm excited to actually really sit down and page by page, because I worked with Joe a lot in collaborating, you know, all the processes it brought to bringing the book together. He spent years and years on the book, so it's, you know, it's another little baby of his.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you started with the Glamour Shots, and then you moved through. What shifted next for you after your time spent with the Glamour Shots? Well,
I went back through, you know, the entire program, and that, you know, at least in my mind at the time, sort of completed my sort of formal training, and I wanted to freelance, so I started shooting with models and doing small jobs in Orlando. I left Glamour Shots, and I was on my own for a few years, just doing shoots. And
how did you get the shoots going? I think we have a lot of audience members that may be starting out, and we're talking with artists so that we can find out some of the steps that they took. I mean, I know you have to be inspired, and you have to have a certain amount of passion to kind of just hit the pavement cold and to go out and find your way in this industry that's really highly competitive. How did you begin that for you?
Well, I had started working weekends with some of the local agencies where I would do, like, you know, mass testing days where, you know, we would shoot anywhere from 10 to 30 girls and do a few looks a piece on them. And, you know, mind you, this is hair and makeup at the time, because you just did both where I was from at the time.
I did hair and makeup as well.
Yeah, and so I had those contacts, and then this amazing photographer, Raphael Tungle, moved to Orlando from San Francisco, and I happened to be one of the first people he met. I know that I scared the bejesus out of him because half my book was beauty and half of it was effects from, you know, from going to school with Joe Blasco. And so, you know, being someone who had shot, you know, more journalism and fashion, he was like, whoa. But it was his sister Mary who said, you got to give this guy a chance, and that was based on me. And I find that, you know, that's been a huge part of my success, is just sort of my demeanor and my sort of humble approach to things that have
Your
really helped me.
personality.
And fortunately for me, it was just natural. I didn't have to change anything. So he gave me a chance, and we started shooting, and he became one of the best photographers in the area. So I had a great book, and
so that's kind of how you developed, you know, your first parts of your book that got to take you to another level.
And I was on top of it. I mean, I had things printed. I got a book. I found out what, you know, I had a friend. Did you shift those
pictures from school a little out? I mean, and then they kind of find their way in a kind of an archive, your own personal archive?
Yeah, I had to separate it because when I would show a client my book, even just a bride, I couldn't have those things in there because they didn't get it. And as much as I resisted that because I wanted to show everything, I started to understand that when in Rome, and so I have needed to adjust much to my own.
First impressions, people get an impression on a photograph, and they don't sometimes see that we can go outside of sometimes what we, you know, have documented in some of our work. So yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, and so I had to start separating it and just moved more and more towards fashion. And even though Orlando had a bit of a film industry starting, the print and the fashion just made more sense to me. You know, the sort of variety of it and the change, doing something different every day, a different shoot every day, different models, just fit better with my personality. And so that's what I pursued.
Do you feel that there's still a big print and fashion world in Orlando? Do you think it's shifted at all? Is it more Miami?
Well, even at the Times, because that was really the heyday of South Beach when it really reinvented, and the Versace's were there and everything was happening with that. But being from sort of Central Florida, both on the west side of Florida, and moving to Orlando, to me geographically, Miami always felt like I was going backwards.
Really?
So I never aspired to move there. It was either LA or it was New York. And New York just, you know, the more that with the models, it made more sense because, you know, LA was much more film and television.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
I wanted to do print. And actually, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just knew what I wanted to do. Does that make sense at all?
Your compass just took you to New York.
I didn't say I have to do Vogue, I have to do Harper's Bazaar, which I've been fortunate enough to do a little bit of everything. It just
I was noticing your covers on your website.
I love my covers.
I love your covers. I was looking at them, each one, and as I listed here, I saw that you have, I can remember them, you have España, you have, like, I don't know, like 25 cosmopolitan covers from all over the world, Russia.
I have covers from countries I haven't even heard of because when I learned it in high school, they didn't exist.
Well, I was looking at it and I was trying to look at the language because it wasn't blowing up full size for me, and that's probably because I don't know how to navigate through the computer. But I saw Russia, I saw you're all different areas of Europe,
Latvia,
Sweden,
Croatia, Turkey. Italy, French.
Were those all done here, or was that done in the countries of themselves?
No, most of them were done here. We shoot. I shoot a lot with Hearst International, and so we will.
Bazaar, I saw your Bazaar covers, which were beautiful.
Which I love those, and sometimes we'll do one shoot, and several countries will pick it up, and then sometimes it's multiple shoots. But they sort of, even though you know, Hearst as well as Condé Nast will have satellite offices around the world, they still sort of look to New York as a bit of, you know, we're the sort of trendsetters, and so they will a lot of times put our hot celebrities on their covers, and then sometimes they do things that are completely different. So,
and Condé Nast is the kind of the corporate umbrella of all these magazines. Am I right in saying that? Is what Condé Nast is?
Well, Condé Nast is one, and then Hearst is another. Condé Nast is Vogue, Allure, Glamour, those sorts of things, and Hearst is Marie Claire, Cosmo, and Harper's Bazaar. So there's several different houses that, you know, sort of
that
are
handle those
the
magazines,
top,
right? Now, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. How does one cross into being able to do a cover? I have to express, you know, having been on the film and TV side, I have limited covers, because most of the covers I do have are because of the film people I've met that by chance get a cover. I think probably, my interview cover, was because I was working with Lily Tomlin and she was doing a Lily Tomlin, they were doing a cover on her. But, you're right, that we kind of sometimes get separated, the fashion print persons and the film and TV, and some find that, film and TV can't cross into, and that print can't cross into the other side. I find that there's a little bit of segregation in that way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
How do you feel about that segregation? Do you feel it's appropriate?
I just feel like it's sort of, it's just really different fields to work in. I mean, film and TV have unions, and we don't. I mean,
But
even
you have agencies.
We have agencies that book us, but there's no sort of regulation other than being licensed as a cosmetologist or an esthetician. But there's sort of there's an acceptance if you're working in film and TV or print that you don't necessarily have to be licensed, or at least that's how it's always been.
Right.
It
You don't
changes.
have to be licensed to be in print or fashion.
No, but like in a salon I do.
Obviously in a salon, because that's a state.
Yes.
That's a consumer affairs world. But I'm just saying, if someone just didn't want to go to cosmetology school and didn't want to deal with esthetician, but still had that drive and passion, and wanted to go into fashion, they wouldn't have to be
No, absolutely.
licensed.
In fact, I would say more aren't than are.
Yeah.
I just happened to
Have
have
it
my
all.
license because I went to barber school and then was able to translate that to New York
Yeah.
into my esthetician license. But the separation I just feel has always been there. I've never looked at it as a negative or a positive thing. I just feel like it's a bit of a different thing, and photographers will get their people and they're going to work with them, and that's created sort of
It's a
a
tight
pocket
family.
of people, and the same with your directors and whoever, the producers that do a lot of the film and television. I'll once in a while do a commercial, and when I hear all the lingo and all the the craft services and all these things that I've sort of picked up over the years, it's so different. And I remember one time I got into a limo with Kathy Griffin, which was a great experience, and she said, "So what do you do?" And I said, "Well, mainly I work in fashion." She said, "You have 45 minutes, and that's it." And I get where it's coming from, because we don't have the pressures of, they expect us to take 2 to 3 hours to get a model ready, but then she's done for the day. And I'll never forget that moment, and it really showed the difference in...
I mean, the speed, like you have
The
a lot more
speed.
time to create
Yes.
and to evolve into a photo
Right.
shoot, where we have a gun to our head and it's like we don't
Right.
want to spend time. What you do, we want the time spent on the set.
Right. But I have
Exactly.
glamour shots in my past, so I can do it quick.
All
I can
right,
do it quick
Joe.
and dirty if I need to.
Well, I find that the segregation on the opposite side does hinder. I find that having worked very hard and started in print in the early 70s and then started to kind of evolve in television just by the nature that I was on the West Coast, that I'm quite capable of doing fashion, and I do have an internal creative, but that sometimes the photographers will adamantly, if I've worked with a star, if I've worked with Minnie Driver, Diane Keaton, or someone that I've had these long relationships with, that a lot of times, if they're not willing to push, the photographer will override. It's like, they don't know how to do print makeup. And there
Right.
has been this stigma that film and TV people don't really know how to unfold their creativity in a print or fashion type world. And I have to say, I do get offended by it personally. I mean,
Yeah.
it is the nature, and I don't take it home with me, but in those moments, I find it's like saying that I'm incapable of bringing to the table the same type of fashion or openness or trend, or I can collaborate in the same type of way with photographer, stylist, grooming
Right.
sort of way. So I feel, it is a little sensitive, pins and needles for
Yeah.
me in those issues. Like, I'm not trying to race to be competitive with a print and fashion person in their world, but if I've established a relationship, for instance, like a L'Oreal campaign, on L'Oreal, it's like, I'm not going to be able to do Diane Keaton. Diane Keaton's going to be done by the L'Oreal people.
Right.
And even though it's blown out and it's adjusted and it's touched up and everything, it's like, I still don't get that opportunity. Well, it is.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. We're on MUATV.com. I mean, people don't just unfold like that,
No.
I'm just saying, so having worked hard and maybe wanting that little opportunity to
Yeah.
maybe be in a lane with my peers where I have that, there's a little feeling of loss of not being able to have maybe been the Collier Strong or the person that gets to have that moment. But
Right.
you know, I let it go. I let it pass.
Well, I've been on both sides of that, and I've had celebrities and I've had models and I've had photographers request me and push for me, you know, and I've also been on the other side of it where I have lost a job because the art director has their team. And what I've learned is that I don't take it personally, because typically it's not about your ability, it's about creating a certain vibe on set. And I do know that if you have one person that's sort of a Debbie Downer, wah, wah, you know, it can really throw it off.
Do I look
And
like a
so-
Debbie Downer? No, I'm kidding. Come on now.
No, I'm just,
I
you
know.
know, and so for me, and I get what you're saying, and
Yeah.
it's the same, but for me, I feel like it would be difficult for me to go into film, because I think there's continuity issues and there's things that I don't have to think about.
Oh, it is a different world.
And
yes.
I always think, okay, what if one of my celebrities or somebody said, do you want to go and do this film with me in Australia? You know, that's a long time for me, and I am motivated by stability and variety. So that leaves me in a bit of a, you know, I have to be careful how I balance what I'm doing to sort of keep that creative spark going. And, you know, this whole HD TV thing sort of freaked me out in the beginning, and I'm certainly not generalizing, but I remember doing video, and I remember that clumpy mascara looked better on video, and
Well, it's
heavy
more forgiving.
contour.
It's more forgiving, yes.
And so people that did work in TV for a lot of years, yeah, it was a big wake-up call when you could see it. But someone that worked in beauty long before retouching, every lash had to be separated, and so for me to go into HD TV was like, you know.
Well, that's why I'm saying I had
Yeah.
the print work in the 70s,
Right.
so I already had honed that natural, you know, very clean,
Yes.
you know, no lines of demarcation look.
Right.
And when video came, it was actually opposite for me, because when I worked in television with a video, I had to understand that I had to compensate more
Yeah.
in order for the values of contouring or the rouge or the colors in the skin were kind of.
Which wasn't always easy to do, was it?
No,
Because
wasn't
you'd
always
look at
easy
it and
to
be
do.
like, wow.
I know, you'd look at it to the eye and you'd go, you know,
Yeah. And I would learn from newscasters or people that would pick it up and go, and
Yeah,
I'd be
the-
like,
the pancake.
and then I'd see it and all right, I get it. And so all of it just blends together and sort of makes it, you know, all of those situations where you learn, sort of create your sort of repertoire of technique, I think.
So, you know, kind of on my last little question to you on this is, you know, I think that what I'm trying to say is that maybe fashion and print and runway artists don't have as much desire to cross over into film and television by the nature of that the responsibilities and the workloads are different. You know, there's
Right.
continuity and there's, you know, department heading and there's budgetary. There's a lot more going on
Right,
in
right.
a 12-week period. But yet, if a film or television person is working with a star, as I was, you know, talking to you on the break, that, for instance, you know, Kate Blanchett is on the cover of Vanity Fair. You know, her makeup artist, you know, Morag Ross or, you know, Elaine Offers or someone else that she's using, you know, they're not necessarily invited to do the cover. You've got Mary Greenwell.
Right.
Now, nothing against Mary Greenwell.
No.
But I'm just saying, so that's, I think, maybe what I was trying to say in a way. How do you feel about
No, it's true, because I have no idea who those two artists are that you mentioned, but obviously I know who Mary is
Right.
from my world, and I think that what has brought the names together is the celebrities, the celebrity presence on covers and at the runway shows and things that weren't happening, you know, 10 years ago as much as they are now. So that really has bridged the two together, and I'm sure quite often, you know, celebrities do ask to have somebody they fell in love with on a film,
Right.
you know, doing their makeup to come and do a cover, and vice versa. I have friends that work in fashion that they'll say, oh, so-and-so asked me to come and do a film, and I turned it down. And it is true, it's a completely different business scheme.
It is.
It's, you know, 10 to 16-hour days. It's doing the same thing every day. There's continuity. There's things that we don't have to consider. And I know my personality, and I've learned to work with it, you know, now that I'm 21. And, you know, it's just...
Wow, you've done so much since 20 to 21.
I know, right?
From glamour shots to, you know, runway. My gosh, time runs
That's my
slow for
running
you.
joke, yeah.
I love it.
So, you know, I've just learned to work with it, and I know that that would not be my thing. And even if I'm on a print shoot and it's, you know, I'm just sort of hanging out, it does nothing for me. I like just keeping busy. I like the change every day, and it's not good or bad, it's just what works for me. So I think that, you know, it is a little hard for people to cross over sometimes.
Now, I was noticing too that you worked with an Italian agency, and you had some clients such as Armani and Versace and Prada. Tell us the dynamic. It sounds extremely exciting. Can you share, were these mostly for print work or for fashion runway?
Well, it was a mix. I moved to New York to, I always pride myself on my two Italian mentors, Joe Blasco and Vincent Longo. Joe Blasco was my sort of technical, you know, very, of course, effects, but also classic sort of Hollywood techniques, more film and TV oriented and beauty. And when I met Vincent Longo, he was sort of my introduction into the fashion, you know, sort of New York celebrity world. And so I moved here when Vincent launched his line in '96, and I helped him in the early stages and promote the product and travel around. And he was the one that suggested I go to Milan. Said, why don't you go to Milan, go and see my old agency. So I did, and they took me on, and I moved there. And,
wow, that's exciting.
You know, within a month, I was doing, you know, couture shows in Rome. I met Diana Ross. It was just this crazy, like, you know, new world for me. And I'd only been out of Florida for a year. I'd been in New York a year, but that was nothing compared to what I experienced there. And so I was with Aldo Coppola's agency, and it was, you know, it's one of the top agencies there, and they had contracts with L'Oreal, and I would do anywhere from 10 to 15 shows every season, Romeo Gigli, Armani, Prada, Versace, all these shows. And eventually I was there for almost 3 years, and eventually was doing some men's shows for Prada on my own, some shows for Armani. I was booked to do some high-profile weddings, all at the same time building my portfolio, doing my European editorial.
What is it like to work on a show? I mean, it's not that I don't know, but I mean, can you give us, you know, because we have audience people that, you know, really don't understand that dynamic. I mean, from the moment that the phone call comes, can you work on the specific show?
Yeah.
Can you kind of walk us through what that's like when you get that phone call from the agency, and that preparation, and are you designing? Are you working under someone? How long does it take? Can you share a little bit of that behind the scenes with us?
Well, it sort of depends. When I was in Milan, we would do so many shows. I would basically get a packet at the beginning of the week, and it would just list all the shows, and it would list the call times, the address, if there was anything specific I needed to bring, and you know, which shows I would be doing, and I would just show up and do them. And that was working on a team underneath an artist that was designing the look. So it was basically showing up. They would go through the look, show us what we needed to do, how we needed to do it, what products we needed to use, and then we would do it. A fashion show is very much like this. You show up at about noon. Let's say the show's at 4. You show up at noon. 1 or 2 girls straggles in. They give you the demo. It's about 1, 2 o'clock. Remind you the show's at 4. About 3:30, all the girls come in from another show with hair extensions and black liner, and of course we're doing curly hair and no makeup. So, and then you have this peak. Everybody comes back, the press comes in, the dressers come in, the designer comes in, the designer's boyfriend or girlfriend or family comes in, and it's just this big, crazy, like 20 minutes and body lotion and last minute manicure, pedicure, and it's just, you know, it's just this crazy peak. And then the show lasts 29 seconds, and that's it. You clean up and you go on to the next one. So It's a great rush. It's not always the place that you can, that you really have a lot of time. So it is a place that you do need to work quickly. You need to be aware of paparazzi's lenses coming over your shoulder. You need to pull away if somebody walks by and it's sort of a not permanent floor. If it's a temporary flooring where the model can shake, similar to working in a location van.
Location, like one leg over a rock and the other
yeah,
over a cliff.
And all those little things, you know, help to sort of get you. And
it's
I'm
working
pretty
under those
aware,
kind of circumstances. You're not just standing there with perfect conditions.
Yeah.
You're having all these other elements that are thrown in, and can you do the most fabulous makeup on
the models on the phone, you know, there's a lot of, but it's
models
fun and it's great energy. Yeah, sometimes the models on the floor and people drinking champagne, and it's just, you know, it's fun. But I did amazing shows in Milan, and, you know, a lot of amazing couture shows in Rome, and
What was your favorite? What really stays with you? And I mean, I'm not saying that they're not all memorable, but what is one that you'd like?
Out of the shows?
Was there one?
Well, I
particular?
remember my first show was Romeo Juliet, and I just remember sort of sitting there and it being kind of a, well, that's not true. My first show in Europe was Romeo Juliet. My first show ever, I believe, was Carolina Herrera, and it was in New York, and I'm trying to remember who was the lead, and I can't. I just know that I worked on Carolyn Murphy, and I was just, blown away that, she was just this huge model at the time, and I was in the tents in New York.
I wanted to touch base. I was remembering that you mentioned in your trip to Milan that you're also doing some exclusive weddings. Can you tell us a story or elaborate on that? I'm imagining it's not just your typical, like, domestic United States brides. I'm imagining it's probably something very extravagant, very rich, something very elaborate.
Well, I actually did several Armani shows, both men and women shows, when I lived there, and sort of had a bit of a relationship with the Armani people. Did I say Armani? Yes.
Mm-hmm, you did.
With the Armani people, as well as my agency had a great relationship with the Armani people, and so there was this model named Michelle Hunsiger, and she sort of had an affiliation with them as well, and they were doing her dress for her wedding, and she was marrying this really great pop star that was really popular at the time in Europe. His name was Eros Ramazzotti, and so Armani booked me for them to do her makeup for the wedding, and so of course they got married at a castle outside of Rome.
Wow.
On the side of this amazing hill, and that was fascinating enough just to be booked by Giorgio Armani to go and do this beautiful, I believe she was Swiss, this beautiful Swiss girl who was marrying this very handsome, very popular sort of singer.
Pop star, yeah.
And so I go and it's at
Were you
this
by
castle
yourself,
in
or
Rome.
were you with a
I
hairdresser?
was by myself. I can't recall who did the hair. It probably was somebody from my agency, but in a situation like that, it was me. And so anyway, as fascinating as that was, quite honestly, I don't believe that it made it to the States, but Eros had done this duet. Mm-hmm. And I had seen the video and I knew the song with this very, very amazing woman, and I was hoping that she would be at the wedding. And so after I did the makeup, I went into the church and I was watching the wedding, and I looked down the pew and there was Tina Turner, who he had done this duet with, and I was like, and I had just read her book, I, Tina, the biography about her, and
what an intense
What's Love
book.
Got to Do with It had just come out. And I remember buying her album when it came out in the early 80s, Private Dancer, and it was one of the first, sort of albums as a little bit of an older teen that I bought, and just loved her and the whole history behind, the whole career she had before that and the whole reinvention. And so to see her, and the next thing I knew, I was in the courtyard having champagne at this wedding reception, and I was standing next to her. And so that's a bit more of a starstruck moment.
That's the glam moment,
but it was, equally as fascinating as working with Michelle and Eros, and they were so gracious, and their family and friends, and it was just it's just one of those standout moments.
That's fantastic.
Over there, so.
Yes, I was just trying to imagine that castle. I bet it was absolutely gorgeous.
I mean, there were paparazzi and helicopters, and I think it was on the side of like a mountain, and just.
Now, did you, just out of curiosity for the makeup part of it, to get away from the glam part of it, did you do her once and then you got to enjoy the festivities, or did you kind of, when she changed over from wedding dress to reception dress, if she did you kind of maintain her? Were you kind of like, she's done and that was it?
I'm sure that I did touch up. That's sort of part of my MO. In fact, even now in New York, when I do weddings, no matter who it is, I typically always include a period of time for me to stay and touch the bride up during the photos. I think that it's, having worked in print for so long, a lot of times the hair person will leave because they arrange things differently. So, sometimes there's hair here, and I just like to sort of give my artistic sort of fashion background to the shot, and just, because it's a wedding photograph. And
there's photographs and video, and it goes back and forth, and she cries.
Keep them powdered. Sometimes I'll powder the groom, who I've never met before. Just little things that make the photos better.
Right.
And so, I'm sure that I I stuck with her and
Yeah.
did some, you know, touch-ups
Do
throughout
you
the
do a lot
night.
of weddings here in New York City?
I probably do about a dozen a year. And,
Yeah.
you know, that comes through my clientele at the salon and just from press as well. And I like it. I'm sort of calm, and it's a good atmosphere for me, and everybody's happy, and it's
I get
a
them too. I
joyous
get like one
day,
a year, and usually it's something like going to, you know, Cabo San Lucas
Yeah.
or Cozumel, and going and staying a few days. I get like one really cool big wedding a year.
Right.
You know.
If I wasn't in the salon, I don't feel like I'd be as connected to that world, but I like it. It grounds me. The appreciation level is amazing. I just did a wedding this weekend and got a text or an email from the bride on the plane on the way to Thailand, or you know, on the ground, getting ready to take off. Just thank you, you know, and me out of how many people participated in her wedding, and so that makes me feel good. And you don't always get that in the more professional world because we do it every day.
Because it's expected.
And it's not that they don't appreciate it, it's just they can't take the time, except Miss Sigourney Weaver, who called me personally after I did her and thanked me, and that's another good moment.
What did you do with Sigourney?
I actually worked with her after 9/11, and she worked on, it was a reading or some sort of poetry thing, and then did some different appearances. She had an interview, they interviewed her about playing the role in Gorillas in the Mist, and you know, so I worked with her several times over a short period, and just amazing. And I just saw her in a movie the other night, and I was like, can't imagine anybody else playing that role.
It is nice when you have a moment where you actually connect your career with someone that you admire, that you're outside of your career, that even though we're kind of in the mainstream of that, people think we, you know, take it for granted. I mean, I run into situations all the time where I'm extended to meet people all the time, and when I actually have an opportunity that my personal life is touched by someone that I also am a fan of, or that that has touched me or has influenced me, those are the moments I really take on, where I'm like, I get to be this close because, and I have an opportunity to extend my appreciation or to meet someone or to have shared a moment that normally wouldn't come about in a person's lifetime unless they were doing the kind of work they're doing or have, you know, a type of reputation for the work they do to be in that situation. So that's really nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we move on from Milan, and we do all these incredible fashion shows. We stay there for a year.
No, almost 3. I was there
Almost
about 2.5 years.
Wow.
And lived there.
So 1 year
and-
led to a little bit more. You were imagining a year when you left.
Well, I sort of didn't know what to imagine. I'd never been out of the country. I didn't speak a word of Italian. I spoke German, and that didn't get me very far at all.
Do you speak
over there.
Italian now?
I do.
That's nice.
I do. I studied it when I was there. I studied on my own, and then I went to sort of a Italian for foreigner school for several months and learned, and just, you know, by being in the atmosphere for 2.5 years. Because I did go on my own, I didn't know anybody. I stayed with a friend of Vincent's, but eventually I was in sort of what they call a residence, which is like a live-in hotel, and I was on my own, and so I had to get by, and I got by, and I learned it, and that was one of the best things to come out of it, personally, is to get that language and the understanding of it.
Yeah.
And I just, you know, after 2.5 years, it was just time to come back. I was anxious to start my career in New York. I knew that I would be starting at ground level again because I'd only been here a year and hadn't really
but you have all
broken
this
in.
great portfolio material, I would imagine, and all
And
this great
that definitely helped.
experience with these designers that has to lead you through the door of opportunity a little easier.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's just really
How do you do that
contacts and
transition?
trust.
How do you come from the Milan and walk through the threshold of an agency or a doorway that then begins to, you know, open up your career in New York? How does that work for you?
Well, it just was one step at a time. I mean, it was at the
your first
time
step?
it was never enough. I actually came back and went back into the salon and sort of reacquainted myself with that, and that was at the time, quite honestly, more of a survival thing. It was like, okay, I can go here, and even though I enjoyed doing it, it wasn't on my radar after being completely freelanced in Europe, and I wasn't doing eyebrows or any of that.
You can always fall back on the salon.
Yeah, and
I mean, I have that opportunity
it's paid off now because it's
yeah.
a full-time thing, and it's, you know, it's been a really great thing to have that. And then I just, you know, through Vincent contacts and different people that I knew, and just started meeting people and testing and, you know, reinventing and getting better.
Let's talk about testing. How does that work? I mean, in some of these questions I ask you, I know that we're both seasoned professionals,
Yeah.
but I also want to ask some questions that will help with the inspiration for some of the audience members that are kind of looking to maybe get
Yeah.
involved in print and fashion and learn some of the ways that you have to hit the pavement. And so some of the questions I'm asking you, I know that we both understand the answers, but I'm wondering if you can share from your experience, what does testing involve, and what does it really mean, and how does it come into play for someone that's getting involved in print and fashion?
Well, people ask me a lot whether it's for a niece or a friend. It's like, how do they get into the business? And I say, you just have to start doing it, because that's what I did when I was doing hair. I wanted to do makeup, so I just started doing makeup on people and taking pictures of it. And I wasn't worried about it being the best picture in the world. I just started doing it. And to me, testing is a prime example of that. And I still test. I have a test next week.
I test too.
And it basically just means nobody's getting paid, but you're doing what you want to do. You're being creative. You're collaborating with a stylist, a hair person, a photographer, you know, and the model to create photos that everybody can use to promote themselves. Because we don't get paid typically a lot to do editorial.
Yeah, editorial is not a very high-paying job, even for the most famous of makeup artists. I mean,
no, it doesn't matter.
I mean,
the
I don't know if
magazine's
you know
rate
my friend Angela Levine. I don't know if you know her.
I know the name.
Yeah, and she works out of New York, and you know, she does Nicole Kidman, and she does, you know, a few other people. But I'm saying, she will always say, you know, editorial is known for, you know, 250, 300, maybe 4 or 5, but it's not this, you know, $1,000, you know, intense job that you're going to get paid really well. And most of it's just because you get these really valuable tear sheets and these really valuable experiences that lead you
to the advertising,
and the
celebrity
campaigns.
Work. Absolutely. And that's, you know, that's how testing is, and it's just a great, it's become a sort of creative retreat for me, because after so many years of doing what is trendy, or what the celebrity wants, or what the photographer wants, or what the fashion director wants, or the stylist, or the magazine, that's a time that, if I'm in the right situation and I've lined it up correctly as I like to do, it's what I want to do. You know, I'm involved in picking the girl. I can get the right eyebrows that I want. If I want a hair person there, I can say, yes, bring somebody in for hair. If not, I do the hair, or I'll slick it back, or whatever. And so it's a time for me to sort of direct and produce and sort of get my vision out there without someone else's influence.
Right.
And it shows. Some of the strongest things in my book, and technical things makeup-wise, are tests. And some of my favorite things I've ever done are tests from 10 years ago in Orlando, just because the freedom was there.
That you're not being restricted by the ad agency clientele about don't do this, use this, that type of control.
And it's not always restricted. It's just sometimes I don't like the lighting, or I don't like the hair. And it's not that it's bad. It's just after years, you have a certain aesthetic that you like looking at, and every artist has that. So I love it, and I think everybody should do it. And as frustrating as it can be to sort of orchestrate all that on your own, it's worth it, because you just have to do it.
Now, in a portfolio situation, would you by chance agree with this statement? It's better to have one good picture than 10 mediocre, kind of nondescript pictures?
Yes. However, having said that, I feel like you have to consider your audience and who's looking at your book. And what I would show a young photographer is not the same thing I might show a young editor at a magazine, or a seasoned editor.
So you will shift and keep putting your portfolio together based on where you're taking your portfolio to be seen?
Sometimes I will, yeah. I think more so, not so much now as in the early days.
Now, how do you feel about the old-fashioned portfolio, acetate pages in a black, vinyl 11 by 14 or 8 by 10 book, as compared to the web? And the reason I ask that is that some artists feel that their images get stolen, and people, take their images from the web and then utilize them for their own credit. and that sometimes you still have to use the old-fashioned type book. How do you feel about the difference between the web book and the old-fashioned send your book out through the agency? And because that's primarily how it was done before. Your agency
Yeah.
has your book, they send it out, it's sent back.
Right.
You know, and those were the actual printed photographs that the photographer has the negatives. Nobody else really has them other than the photographer or the model. And now people are just putting things on the web. How do you feel? I mean, I have a web page, so I utilize it because, you know, the producers and directors, you know, they want one click. They don't have time to wait for some book. They want to click because right then and there they want to
Right.
see, or they're going to transfer it to an actress who's somewhere else who won't be able to get a book.
Well, again, it's the audience, and there are some people that still want to see a physical book. They want to look at the detail in the skin. They want to see what they're getting into. They want something that they can sort of, you know, flip through at a conference table if they're deciding on a campaign. I think the web is great, but it basically makes it easier for people to just judge you on who you've done and not your technical skill, which has always been a bit of a sore spot for me, because you can have the most amazing makeup on your sister, and the person that has, you know, a mediocre or even less than acceptable makeup on someone who's rather famous or a supermodel has a better shot at getting booked sometimes. And I'm not dumping on the agency, I mean on the industry. I just, you know, feel that you do have to be careful that we don't allow that to be, you know, that we sort of perpetuate that by making it easier for people to just say, okay, he has a Harper's Bazaar cover with so-and-so, so.
Right. This is Kelsey Fry with MUATV.com. Spotlight on Success with LDean. Thank you so much for joining us here
Absolutely.
at the Parker Meridian, New York City. And we look forward to seeing your demos. They'll kind of be inserted through our interview. And when you come to Los Angeles, let's get together. And we'll
Absolutely.
get together with Joe and we'll do another demonstration.
Yeah.
And can you wow brow me the next time I see you? I want a wow brow
Absolutely.
from you. Okay. Well, keep watching MUATV.com. This is Kelsey Fry. Back to you, Joe.